I'd like to share with you a personal story. It's a little bit embarrassing. A long time ago, back in the 1960s, in the late 60s, I was in kindergarten and I played the piano at a basic level back then. And in kindergarten, they asked me to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. So I did, and the class sang, and I thought it was a lot of fun. And then the teacher said to the class, "Hey, let's sing the second verse." And she looked at me to play, and I was like freaking out because I didn't realize, I guess, that the second verse is identical to the first verse as far as the piano goes. So just out of muscle memory, I played this, Mary Had a Little Lamb again. It went great. I was like amazed, like, wow, I didn't realize I knew the second verse. And you may be thinking, okay, Keith, why are you sharing that story with us right now? And the reason I'm sharing with you right now is because all the skills that we've learned in working with and navigating and working with SharePoint Server, those same skills, the same logic and the same methods also apply if you're using the cloud-based service of SharePoint Online. Because even though the interfaces may be slightly different from time to time, the configuration, the gear icon, the site settings, the site contents, document libraries, lists, and other apps, those are still used and created and managed in very much the same way. And what I'd like to do in this nugget is take a few minutes with you and just give you a quick tour of SharePoint Online. And what you may discover and be comfortable about is that it is shockingly similar to the SharePoint server that we've been doing all the hands-on labs for all the way through this course. So to start off, I'm going to click on SharePoint, and I'm going to click a link to create a new site. And let's create a site called Acme. And all we need to do is click on Create. And dun da da da, here it is. And because I'm using SharePoint Online and I've got Office 365 as part of that, I've got some pop-ups saying, hey, don't miss out. You can download the apps right now, so you can use them online or on your computer, referring to the Microsoft Office apps. But for now, I just want to focus on SharePoint. Now, if you and I wanted to add an additional web page to this Acme site, do you recall from our previous nuggets how to do that? Where would we go to add a new page to this site? And if you're saying, Keith, we're going to click on the gear in the upper near right-hand corner of the screen, you'd be absolutely right. And then from the drop-down, we'll select Add a Page. It's giving me a little tutorial on how I could use pages. So I'm going to click Next to go through those. That's great. And I'll call this Page 2 for Acme Inc. Then we could click on the plus symbol. And here we could add things like text or an image or a document and other content for this web page. If we use the top level navigation here and click on Home, it takes us back to our home page for Acme. And just like on the SharePoint server, you and I could change the look and feel of this site. We could either click here in the Getting Started area, or we could click on the gear, and from the drop down, click on Change the Look, or we could go to Site Settings, and then from Site Settings, we could go ahead and click on Change the Look right here under the Look and Feel section. So if we wanted to get that pink color like we had in the lab or something similar to that, we could simply select it, click on the Try It Out link, and if we like what we see, we can go ahead and click on the Yes, Keep It up here in the upper right. Keeps on nagging me about installing Microsoft Office. I'm going to keep saying no to that for the moment. And the question may be, how do we create subsites in SharePoint Online? The answer is the same way we did it with SharePoint Server. We go to the gear icon, and from the drop-down, we're going to select Site Contents. There's also a link over in the Quick Launch area for Site Contents that would also take us there. And down here near the bottom, it's listing all the contents for our site. There's also a link for our subsites. At the moment, we don't have any subsites. To create a new subsite from the Site Contents area, we would click on New. And from that drop-down, we would go ahead and select Subsite. Let's name this Engineering Subsite Engineering. And for the actual URL, we'll put ENG. We'll choose our site template. Let's go ahead and use the team site. Let's use the same permissions as the parent site, so there's inheritance. Let's also display a link for this site in the quick launch area of the parent, and we'll also use the existing top link navigation from the parent site. And then we'll click on Create to create this subsite. So now we're looking at the engineering subsite. If we wanted to change the look and feel of this subsite, we could go ahead and do it in all the ways we've done previously. I'm going to use the gear and then change the look. So we can change the look and feel here. Let's go ahead and choose, let's go ahead and grab this one right here, the wood look. And we'll use the color similar to we did in our labs earlier. And I'll use a Seattle layout. And then we'll click on Try It Out right here. So we'll click on Try It Out. And if we like it, we'll go ahead and click Yes, Keep It up here in the upper right-hand corner. And that takes us back to the site settings for this engineering site. Well, in this engineering site, if we wanted to create a new document library, we just click on the gear. From the drop-down, we'd click on Add an App. We'd click on Document Library from our apps. We'll give it a name. Let's call it ENGDL for Engineering Document Library. That'll help keep the URL short, and we'll click on Create. That drops us into site contents for the engineering site, and if we scroll down, here is our engineering document library that we just created. If we want to modify the settings for that, for example, to change the name or the navigation, all we need to do is hover over that, and then there's once again, the ellipsis over to the right. So if we click on the ellipsis, and from that drop down, simply select Settings to look at the settings of that document library. Let me go ahead and do a Control+ to make the font a little bit bigger. So here under General Settings, if we want to change the list name, description, and navigation, just like on the server, we'd click on that link, give it a better name, and add a link in the quick launch over on the left if we want to by clicking that radio button and clicking on Save. So that's done. If we go over to that engineering document library by selecting it from the quick launch, we're now looking at the engineering document library. And if we go back to Site Contents and then scroll down to the engineering document library and select the ellipsis once again and go to Settings, we could modify the additional controls, including versioning settings, where we not only control versioning, but also whether or not new content to that document library has to be approved or not. This is also where we could go to delete the document library if we wanted to remove it. And again, these settings are virtually identical to what we had on the SharePoint server, except this is being provided online in the cloud by a service provider. If we click on the document library to go to it, and we want to add files here, we have the option for upload. We can also do drag and drop. That also works to upload a new file. And we also have the option here of new. And because we have Microsoft Office integrated in this implementation of SharePoint Online, we could actually launch one of these applications, start creating a document, and have it saved directly in this document library. So for example, if I wanted to drag in a document, let me go ahead and drag in a picture of an angry mob right here. It's just a little image I had on my computer. Just dragging and dropping lets me automatically upload that. So now I've got the angry mob file in this document library. If I click on it, that opens it up to give me a preview of that. I'm going to go ahead and click back to go back to the document library. So with that angrymob.png file selected, we can go ahead and use the ellipsis up here to go ahead and act on that file, including setting up alerts and version history and checkout information regarding that file. And if we click on the little ellipsis right next to that angrymob.png file, that also gives us a list of options regarding that file, what we can do. Or if we wanted to share this document, we can click on Share, put in the name of another SharePoint user, including the type of rights that we want to give them. Can they edit it or just view it? And then click on Share. And that would trigger an email message to be sent to that user, as well as give them those permissions to that file. Regarding inheritance and permissions, that works the same way it does with SharePoint Server. So for example, if we click on the engineering top-level navigation to go to the home page for the engineering site, and we want to look at the permissions and group information, once again, we would go to the gear icon from the drop-down. We'd go to Site Settings. And then in Site Settings, we could go ahead and click on Site Permissions or People and Groups with the same functionality that we had in the SharePoint server that was in our lab environment. The SharePoint Online, again, is giving us very similar functionality and tools to work with SharePoint. So if we clicked on Site Permissions, currently, these three groups have these three sets of permission lists to this engineering site, and that's because they are inheriting permissions. If we wanted to stop that, we could go ahead, just like we did in SharePoint Server, we could click on the Stop Inheriting Permissions to stop future inheritance, and then we could go ahead and simply manage this site based on the groups, their permissions, and the users in those groups. If we wanted to check to see which users or groups had what permissions to this site, we could just use the Check Permissions button once again, and I'll type in Keith, because that's the only user on the system so far. So we'll go ahead and select Keith Barker, and click on Check Now. It gave me full control through the group. It also gave me some restrictions, which I imagine are to help me not destroy the administrative environment that I would need as a base level to work with the site. And if we wanted to create a list, we'd create it the same way we created a document library, by starting by going to the gear from the drop-down, selecting Add an App, and then choosing the app that we want to add. So for example, if we wanted to add a calendar or a contact list, we simply click on that icon, we give it a name, click on Create. It's going to drop us into Site Contents. If we scroll down, there's our contacts right there. We can click on it. And then from here, we could add new contacts by clicking on the plus symbol and adding in the individuals we want to add. So I'm just going to put a first name in and click on Save. And I've got one entry in our contact list. And if we want to work with the various views regarding this contact list, if we don't want to use the default all contacts, we can click on the ellipsis Just like on the SharePoint server, we can click on Create View and then create a new view based on what we want to see and how we want to organize the data in that view. And then we'll click on Home to go back to the home site. The bottom line is, with SharePoint Online, virtually all the features and functionalities that we get with SharePoint Server locally on premise, those same skills and same logic apply to SharePoint Online. So all of the hands-on labs that I've been encouraging you to do throughout our journey together, those are going to serve you both with the server version of SharePoint as well as SharePoint Online. And if you haven't taken the opportunity, as we've gone through all these nuggets together, to go through the labs for SharePoint Server to practice and reinforce those skills working with SharePoint, I would encourage you to go back to those labs, those videos that you haven't done the labs for, and take a few minutes and do those labs. It'll help reinforce the concepts and make your skills with SharePoint that much better. And that leads us, by the way, to the end of this course. So on behalf of myself and the entire CBT Nuggets family, I'm very grateful that you joined us for this course. I hope it's been beneficial to you, and I hope to see you again in a future course. Meanwhile, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.